Whether you're looking for answers to specific life questions or seeking to become the best version of you possible, welcome to the Mental Breakdown and Psychreg podcast, where we offer insight, information, and strategies based upon research and years of practice as clinical psychologists. So sit back, have a listen, and get connected with our hosts, Dr. Berney Wilkinson and Dr. Richard Marshall. Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about an interesting alternative use for an alternative substance. We're going to talk about the use of, or an article that we read about the use of cannabis for sleep. Now, I've never heard of the use of cannabis for sleep.
You haven't?
No. I've heard about it for like anxiety and maybe just kind of keeping people calm, decreasing stress and frustration and those kind of things.
You haven't had a teenager come in and say, I can't get to sleep if I don't smoke some weed.
No, that's never the thing. It's always it's to relax, but it's always in the sort of in the realm of anxiety and stress. So
okay. Well, actually, when I first saw this article, I was reading it because I do have a bunch of teenagers who say I can't sleep unless I smoke weed. But the fascinating thing about this article, I've been waiting for this article to appear for a while. Not this particular one, but the theme in this article. And the theme in this article is that we are beginning, as marijuana laws change around the country, and now there are 9 states that have recreational marijuana is legal.
Okay.
Just recreational. And so a number, I think half the states approve medical marijuana.
Right.
As public policy and political positions change on this topic, we have started to do more research. See, the problem was when in the 1970s, when the Nixon administration decided to wage this war on drugs, it was before you, wasn't it?
It was.
That seems like history to you, doesn't it?
You mentioned things.
The recent past, but for you it's like a history book. They put all of these drugs just got lumped into Schedule 1.
Right.
Okay, and Schedule 1 means
no research,
no medical benefit, and high possibility of abuse.
Right.
Okay, significant probability of abuse and no medical use. Okay, so marijuana got dumped into cocaine and heroin and all the other what we call hard drugs. So from the 1970s on, we had this prohibition. I mean, you couldn't even get marijuana to do research. You couldn't buy it to do research on it because it was illegal. Okay, and so most of the research on marijuana was done in other countries, especially Israel. I think had a very active marijuana research activity coming out of Israel. So much of what we learned about cannabis, we've learned from studies in other countries. In the late 1970s, post-Nixon, several states began to decriminalize and move toward medical marijuana. When the Reagan administration came in, we went back to criminalization. You remember Nancy Reagan had Just Say No to Drugs. Right. So that was her project. It was drug abuse, especially among youngsters. And so we began this Just Say No campaign. In the 1990s, then we go back to a different kind of approach, and it was spurred on by the AIDS epidemic in San Francisco. This new disease had come out, and people were looking for some way to treat the symptoms. And so in the early 90s, marijuana became one of the treatments for people suffering from AIDS. So in 1991, California passes the first medical marijuana bill. So attitudes have changed over time, and while many adults consider marijuana a bad drug, public policy is moving to, well, maybe we should take another look at this drug. And that's what this article does. It provides that background from making marijuana a Schedule 1 hard drug to maybe there is some potential medical benefit to this drug. Okay?
Right.
And he does a nice job explaining that. And and it's a good thing for. I mean, most teenagers will tell you this story.
Right.
Most teenagers will tell their parents this story.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So if you're a parent and you're struggling with this issue with your teenager, you might want to take a look at this article, and we'll post it later. So
yeah, absolutely, it'll be in the show notes. But it's a really important topic for us to discuss, because depending on the state that you live in, it's still it may still be a criminalized offense to possess or to use marijuana, and regardless of where you are, if you're using marijuana recreationally and you're underage, it's a problem as well.
Right.
They may the level of criminality may vary, but that's a major issue depending on where you live and that kind of thing. So, but it's really important that we consider the idea, at least, that there are potentially some medicinal benefits to marijuana, and not just marijuana, but there's other substances as well. One of the very first research projects I worked on as an undergraduate psychology student was with nicotine. We worked with nicotine as a treatment for ADHD and Tourette's disorder in children.
Right.
So we were putting nicotine patches on children as young as 8 years old, and found them to be tremendously beneficial, especially for Tourette's disorder.
Right.
So, we think about these substances that, are, I don't want to use the word taboo, but they're certainly sort of stigmatized from the perspective of being...
They're considered illicit.
Right.
Illicit drugs. Right.
Right, right. And when in fact, we can't forget that many of these substances have been used by our ancestors for many, many different reasons, and not just recreationally, but they were used for many different reasons, and some of those reasons were medicinal.
Right. Yeah, I think of the old. We have a bottle back here.
These influenza.
Yeah, influenza. The old medicine salesman.
Right.
Who traveled around in his wagon, and a lot of those would today be considered illicit drugs.
Right.
They had marijuana and
opium.
Dilaudid and opium and all kinds of stuff in them. For treatment of all sorts of things. So these drugs do have medicinal qualities. One of the ones making a resurgence today is LSD.
Right.
Not the old Timothy Leary LSD, also before your time, but microdosing of LSD. That you can give tiny amounts of LSD, and it seems to have a therapeutic effect for some forms of mood disorders. Has to be done very carefully under a physician's direction.
Right.
Don't go out and make your own and do it.
Don't do that.
This is a pharmaceutical that has to be carefully managed by somebody who knows what he or she is doing.
Right. And there was some research that came out of California not too long ago. Somebody's calling me on my phone in the other room. It was so loud. So there you go, guys.
Start your day with the Chelsea theme song.
That's right. I've completely lost track of what I was thinking about. Oh, in California, they recently had done some research that looked at the use of mushrooms.
Right.
Psychedelic mushrooms for the treatment of personality disorders.
Yeah.
And they found that under the right circumstances, so again, this is under medical guidance, in the right circumstances, in fact, you can alter very challenging personality conditions through the use of some of these psychedelic mushrooms and psychedelic substances.
Right. Marijuana has also been used with eating disorders.
Right.
People who won't eat, who don't want to eat. We talk about the munchies that one gets after smoking marijuana. So it has been found to be effective with some people with eating disorders.
Right.
So,
But I think before we end this episode, I think one of the things we have to mention is that despite the potential for medicinal applications of marijuana or any other substance, that does not justify the use of it in an illegal way, in an unjustified way, or in a self-motivating way.
Right.
If you need the substance, you need to see a prescribing physician or somebody who will give you the card that you need, depending on the state that you're in, the information that you need to be able to get it, so that they can determine whether or not it's appropriate for you.
Right.
Just using marijuana because it helps you sleep or helps you relax, and despite the illegality of it, it is problematic. You can't do that.
Yeah, you need to be aware that there are still restrictions. I mean, as there are with alcohol.
Right.
Alcohol is a legal drug, right?
Right.
Unless you're 18.
Right.
And then it's not. So we're going to have the same kind of restrictions with cannabis.
Right.
Okay.
And tobacco.
And tobacco.
The same
they're
thing.
talking about raising the smoking age to 21
right.
in most states. I guess it's 18 in a lot of states. Now they want to raise the smoking age to 21 to discourage youngsters from smoking. The other thing to remember, there are still federal laws against marijuana use. So it might be legal in 9 states, but it's illegal in the country. So you can smoke if you're in Colorado, you can smoke it. If you're in Washington, D.C., you can smoke it. But if you go to Virginia, it's still illegal.
Right.
The second thing about medical marijuana, before everybody gets excited, is that if you read your state laws, it's likely that medical marijuana will be approved for some disorders. Right. And not others.
Right.
And the reason he wrote this article is because in his state, medical marijuana is approved, but the list of disorders, the list of conditions is limited.
Right.
And insomnia is not on the list.
Right.
So it's not medically prescribed for insomnia because that's not one of the conditions that it can be used for.
Right.
And so this doesn't really open up the floodgates to you just can't go in, and there are many physicians who have already posted signs, don't ask, because they don't treat the conditions.
Right.
In some states they don't treat the conditions for which it is approved.
Right.
So there are some things here that you need to be aware of before you go out and say, okay, fine. That said, yes, we are moving to a loosening and a relaxing of the laws, clearly. And I think before long, most states will approve it for recreational use.
Right. I think the most fascinating thing that's come out of this entire movement over the past couple of years is the recognition that the cannabis plant has many more chemicals and substances within it. And what they're finding is that THC, which is the substance that gives you that euphoric feeling, is only one, and that there are others that actually are better at treating some of these medical issues. And so what we're going to find, I think, in the coming years is that as more research is done, they're going to find ways to isolate those protein chains, and so that can be administered so you don't have the high from marijuana, but you can have the medicinal benefits.
That's right. You can take out the THC. I mean, scientists know how to do that. Chemists can take out the THC, and then we can use all the others. But in order to do that research, it has to be decriminalized.
Right.
I mean, you can't. You couldn't even buy the stuff to do the research.
Right.
But at least now we can do the kind of research that needs to be done, and we'll have a more sensible. I think in a year or so we're going to have more sensible policies around the country.
Yeah.
So it's not just a bad drug.
Yeah.
There are some medicinal benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. That's it.
That's why I was glad this article came out.
Yeah.
Because it's time that we.
It's just sensible.
Right.
So.
Let's take a scientific approach to this and see what's valuable.
Absolutely. So. All right. Well, that's it for today. Until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, and forget to be afraid.